So once I found out that I was in a shipping war, I had to look at who was or what policy and who was in charge of the mechanism that created that shipping war. And what I found was an apparatus of joint tenancies worldwide. The main one was through the Universal Postal Union in Bern, Switzerland. It was the head clearinghouse for all fee for freights for mechanics for contracts on planet Earth. I sat down with them for a 3-hour conversation on June 18, 2003, where the establishment of who I am as Sovereign Postmaster General of planet Earth was clearly laid out. Their words is that I had created my own venue in a now-time scenario, and no one on the planet had ever claimed that venue. No government construct, no postal construct, no sovereign, no one. And that I was the only one, was solitary. And I got a letter when I went to the Vatican, got a letter from the Vatican saying that I was a solitary condition of the state, was the exact words that they used for my Postmaster Generalship to run all banks and militaries on planet Earth. Because on June, one of the strategic places that I had to go, which had joint tenancies on control of people, was the Vatican. When I went to the Vatican, it was for 3 days, from June 18th, from June 16th, 17th, and 18th. I left there the morning of the 18th of 2003. During that time frame, I had mailed myself around the world without a passport over to there to prove a point. One, to prove that I was Postmaster General Sovereign of planet Earth, and that I had tactical knowledge on how to move myself from point A to point B as a piece of cargo. During that conversations at the Vatican, they brought in about 40 cardinals to walk around St. Peter's Basilica and St. Peter's Square with me. And they asked me many, many questions. And so I spent 3 days fielding questions, answering questions, and walking through the mechanics of what I was witnessing on the hieroglyphics of what was going on there. They had symbols for sexual connotations. They had symbols for banking. They had symbols for directionals. They had symbols for the suspension of time. And so all these things were relevant in my discussions, which were classified with those cardinals. The Secretary of State's office went under contract with me. Now, David Winkle Miller was there with me, but he was only allowed to be a witness on the contract. He was not allowed in the room when I wrote the contract and booked myself in to be Sovereign Postmaster General and to run and be Commander-in-Chief of all militaries on the planet, because I had proved to them that I comprehended the mechanics as a global Commander-in-Chief of military movements. Just to even get to there, I had done some things. I don't, for purposes of this documentary, most of that is classified, so I can't get into that because I don't want to put that into the public sector and have other people trying it. That wouldn't be fair to the people that they would be giving directions to. So for that, we'll just keep that on the side. But they were satisfied with my capacity to articulate navigation of cargoes, being at militaries, being at sequesters, or what they would call acquisitions, and to move things from point A to point B. At the end of that, they took me into the Secretary of the State's office at the Vatican, where I sat down for 3 hours and wrote up a contract. I autographed the contract, did a commercial book in with both hands, put all their stamps and certified seals on those contracts, autographed the stamps, autographed all their embossments and all their insignias and all this and that. And then the Secretary of the State came in. They called him Angelo Sedano. His real name was Michael. And David Winkle Miller, who also was a witness to that, and autographed the contract for me to run all the constructs of banking on planet Earth, and military movements and functions and consular posts and anything to do with shipping, because I had given enough closure that I had superior tactical command control knowledge, firsthand knowledge of what it took to be that person. And I am that guy. So basically the navigation of all treaties, codes, statutes, contracts on planet Earth, if they don't have my thumbprint and my autograph on the contract, they are not valid for movement. The other locations would be the main one, other than the Universal Postal Union, was the International Bureau of Weights and Measures, because that's the capacity for a country to register its language, grammar, to create sums and differences, communication, differences, solutions, settlements. Because I was the sovereign Postmaster General, Commander-in-Chief of the District of the Columbia, on January, for my filings and the federal government vacating in 2000, November of 2000. On January, I waited the 1 year, 1 day timeline, and under maritime salvage showed up on January 15th, 2002. The first function for me as Postmaster General was to go look at the surveillance of what condition the money was in. So my first task was to walk into the U.S. Treasury. As I walked into the U.S. Treasury, they were flying a flag out front that was not a flag anywhere on planet Earth. It was a flag, mumble-jumbled flag that meant nothing. So I walked in the doors and I gave them command to take down the flag and put up the correct Title IV 1 to 1.9 dimension flag. Of course, they put me under custody, and I put them under citizens' custody myself, and they took me up to the 4th floor of the U.S. Treasury, where they brought in the head of U.S. Secret Service and 4 Treasury agents. I explained to them and gave them closure that America was a verb on the money and it doesn't exist, in violation of Title 18, 1342, mail fraud, in violation of Title 18, Section 1001, fictitious grammar. They concurred with that. I then turned around and said, you've got to take down the flag because I am the Postmaster General of this country and the correct flag must be flying at the U.S. Treasury. They brought in the head of U.S. Secret Service. They kicked out all Treasury agents. In the room was the head of U.S. Secret Service, David Wincole Miller, myself, and 2 others. The head of U.S. Secret Service asked me to come over to the window. I went over to the window at the U.S. Treasury. He said this to me: "It is the corporate policy of the United States government to hire stupid people. That way the people way up on top are not accountable for what the stupid people do to the citizens. You are the Postmaster General, you are the Commander-in-Chief, but nobody will believe you." He goes, "Look, are you satisfied?" They took down the flag that meant nothing and placed the Title IV 1 to 1.9 dimension flag and hoisted it up the flag standard. And that was my first function as Commander-in-Chief and Postmaster General in the District of the Columbia. Later that day, I went to the fraudulent grammar corporation called the Federal Reserve. As I walked in the door to the Federal Reserve, I had a judgment, which I have a court performance from the United States District Courts out of Casper, Wyoming, dealing with tax concerns since the IRS was kicked out of the United States in 1999. What that means for the citizens out there: in the year 1999, you were all tricked and fooled. You were told you will no longer sign your checks over for your taxes over to the Internal Revenue Service. Why? Because the Internal Revenue Service has been kicked out of the United States. Oops, one small thing, they forgot to tell you this. They then told you to make out your taxes to the U.S. Treasury, because the bankruptcy was over and the IRS ceased to exist in the United States. But because I know the secrets and I know how to order the courts, command the courts open, I commanded the court open to get the performance for the payment of the taxes in the correct communication, parsing, syntax, grammar. There are no laws, there are no rules for correct communication, parsing, syntax, grammar for a performance of the payment of the taxes. Therefore, the federal courts concurred with me and put me on vacation from the performance of the taxes. We filed that in compliance with the Federal Reserve under their foreign banking statutes to register judgments with the foreign bank. The foreign bank being the U.S. Treasury, which it was registered, and the other foreign bank in the venue was the Federal Reserve.